Oh, I will need to actually just double check your guys' sound.
Hello.
Hello,
Can you hear me? Can you hear
I
me?
can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Hello.
Hello and welcome to TKB Live. We are just testing with 3 people because the network may not necessarily be able to handle us. Do I have Tom in the call?
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear Tom. And I am also joined with Ping Xiao.
Hi guys. Can you guys hear me?
People in chat, if there are issues with audio, please let me know now so I can get them fixed. I think the others might be a bit quiet.
I'm still here, I promise.
There's echo. Uh-oh. That shouldn't be the case.
Well, Ping has headphones in, and I have headphones in.
Echo suggests that my audio is coming through twice. Desktop audio is muted. My microphone is coming through. Slight echo on Tom and Ping. Oh. This is not something that I am qualified to fix.
Do you have any speaker sound coming through on your end, Dan?
Okay, wait, I think I found the issue. Tom, can you talk?
Yes, I can do talking. That is well within my skill set.
Ping, can you talk, please?
With difficulty at times.
As soon as I unmute myself, yeah.
Okay, awesome, cool. Okay, so apparently the NDI, while it gives me both of your video feeds separate, it just gives all of the audio together. I don't know. Can people confirm that the audio is fixed? Tom sounds good. That is good. Awesome.
Neato.
Also, welcome everybody to the chat. Lots of friendly faces that we know.
Hello, friends.
Cool. Awesome. Everybody's happy. People are still trickling in, but I think we could start discussing what we're going to be talking about today. So for those of you who don't know, this weekend we had, I believe, Central American WCQ. We had Irish Nationals, and we had Italian Nationals, and I believe Croatian Nationals was also on this weekend. So there may have been a few other nationals that I've forgotten, but those are kind of the big events. So as we normally start out, we're going to talk about the events that we were at this week. So I was personally at Irish Nationals. I was helping with organization of the event. We had 169 players, which is almost double what we had last year, which is really insane because we had prepared for a bit of growth, but not that much growth. So,
am I right in thinking this was the largest ever Irish Nationals?
It is the largest ever tournament run in Ireland, with the exception of the European Championships. Okay. And the Magic has held the Pro Tour in Dublin once or twice, but those are kind of artificially inflated numbers.
Yeah, they're always going to be big events wherever they are.
Yeah, I mean, well, Pro Tour you're flying people in, and Euros you're flying people in, so they're kind of special. But in terms of like open tournaments, I'm pretty sure it's the largest one we've had. But yeah, really impressed with the turnout. We had 16 Dragon Duel again, massive turnout for Dragon Duel in Europe, and it was a very like competitive event, which is something that Irish Nationals has just been going from strength to strength in terms of that. Mambo ended up winning the event. Cormac Adams and Luke Coogan played it out in the finals. It was Thunder Dragon versus Salamangreat, and Salamangreat, piloted by Cormac, ended up taking the event. Both of those decks have been performing really well, and there's something that we will be discussing a lot today, I think, because it's really important to see why they're kind of consistently doing well.
Yeah, Salamangreat's just been sort of showing absolute strength. I guess it's had numbers on its side, loads of people playing it, but it really is just doing spectacularly well. I didn't expect it to actually be winning so many events.
Yeah, so Salamangreat, I'd been talking with James and John, who were the Kuribrohs that topped Irish Nats, about the deck going into the event, and James particularly had been on Orkest beforehand, and we kind of settled on the fact that Salamangreat has a lower ceiling, but you have access to a lot of toolbox style cards, which can improve matchups and just give you kind of a better coverage across the field. So, I think there's a lot to kind of consider about the deck, and I think I definitely rated it a lot lower than. I think I rated it a lot lower than I would rate it now earlier in the season.
I mean, I don't think your rating's wrong. I mean, on paper, Salamangreat is one of the weaker decks in this format. But at the same time, Salamangreat just have no real weakness. And that is saying something a lot about the deck.
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of the point with Salamangreat, right? It's kind of edging into that Zodiac territory where you just have so many ways into your basic combo, and even though your basic combo doesn't shut down the game, it just recurs again and again and again.
Yeah. If there was a Salamangreat Trident, they would be nuts.
Oh, I mean, if there were any Salamangreat which said during your opponent's turn you could do something, like even if it was just Heath Leo's spin. Imagine if you could Heath Leo during your opponent's turn.
It'd
be bonkers. But yeah, I think like Salamangreat, Thunder Dragons were the two decks that were like really performing well at Irish Nationals. And
was there a lot of Chaos Emperor Dragon at Irish Nationals, or were people building their Thunder Dragons without it? Because I feel like there's very much two different levels to which that deck exists.
Yeah, so Luke Coogan was playing a Chaos Emperor King of Armageddon. I think the same one that Vladis had played at UK Nationals, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about the others. We have a list from Dean, who we featured on the channel before. He had a Guard Dragon Crusadia profile a couple of months back. He made top 16, so congratulations to him. He was playing the purer build of Thunder Dragons. So he was playing just 2 Legionnaires, 1 Darkest Diablos, and 1 of the classic Chaos Emperor, because he was just playing Melody to search out 2. So if you weren't going to get enough stuff in grave because you're not playing Dangers, you can just grab the Chaos Emp to just summon him.
Even with the change to the effect, you can still just use it as a special summon a level 8 body for free.
Yeah, I mean, the rank 8s at the moment are bonkers. The Sky Prison is just such a crazy card. So I think... Yeah, I think both of those decks are the ones that you need to really be aware of going into the weekend coming, particularly North American WCQ. Like, there are going to be a lot of them. We haven't seen the format shift to answer the rise of Thunder Dragons. Now, NA WCQ is likely to be that, and I think something that we're likely to see is an increase in focus on Mystic Mine. Like, it's potential that striker lists are going to go back to using Metaverse and such to bring it into play. What would your guys' thoughts be on that? Because mine has really fallen off, and mine very much dictated the first few weeks of the format for us. And now it's suddenly just, like, where did it go? Like, it's this super impactful card, and everybody has started bringing in spell and trap removal, and then decks like Thunder Dragons can punish people for that.
Yeah, it's a really awkward position where sort of as Thunder Dragon grows, spell and trap removal falls off, and maybe mine does find its way back in there. I think everything in subsequent cycles, when the format starts developing in loops like this, is less polarized than the first time that everything happened. So, like, when you first have iterations of everything, you see loads and loads of Mystic Mine, and then loads and loads of Spell and Trap hate, and then loads and loads of things that are trying to capitalize on there being lots of Spell and Trap hate. And then you go back to the first state again, but with everything being closer to the middle. So it's not going to be as extreme as we saw it before, but I think, we'll definitely see possibly the rise of the impact of Mystic Mine, but I don't know whether it will see an increase in actual volume of play until maybe EU WCQ the following week.
Yeah, it's really hard to tell when exactly stuff is going to kind of take hold. Do you have any thoughts on this, Ping?
I completely agree with Tom. We've seen this happen with the Grass is Greener, where we saw people shifting number of cards in their deck accordingly. And even over this weekend, we have not actually seen that many dedicated Mystic Mine deck. But Mystic Mine as a tag card in the field spell deck, we've seen that pop up a lot. I mean, we're probably going to get onto this in more detail when we talk about the Italian National. But one of the standout rogue deck from the Italian National in the top 8 was essentially the Mystic Mine Trickstar deck that played Metaverse. So in a field full of big Thunder Dragon decks, one Metaverse could potentially just win you the game.
I mean, that's it. Like, we saw Sekka's Light in the Thunder Dragon that finished second at Irish Nationals. And if people are on Sekka's Light, then Metaverse into Mine is just a free match, right?
Yeah, I know that Alec was telling us a story from UK National Championships where he lost the die roll against a Thunder Dragon player. He was looking at his hand full of 4 cards that essentially did nothing through Colossus and an Upstart Goblin. And he was like, well, I may as well play the Upstart Goblin. Just drew a copy of Mystic Mine. He'd already seen that his opponent had resolved Sekka's Light, so he activates Mystic Mine and says, well, you've got fewer cards in deck than me, do you play any outs? And they just went straight to game 2 through the full resolved Thunder Dragon board.
Yeah, and it's crazy. And so, like, realistically, you have decks like Pendulum where, because you're able to just play cards that are spells that just generate another card, it means that you can, you're able to play Mine because you can play things like Set Rotation and Terraforming because they search other cards that synergize well, and then you just have the option to go into Mine. And Orkest gives us the option as well, because Orkest you can set up Mine and you also have inbuilt ways to clear the Mine when it suits you best.
Agreed. I had that experience at National last weekend in Warpath match. In fact, this wasn't even against Thunder. This was against Guru of all things.
Okay.
Where I lost control of the game. My board sword got stolen, and my last move was essentially terraforming for a Mine, and then played it.
Yeah.
And essentially, the first thing my opponent did was just counted the number of cards I had in my deck. I had whack. So that was it. That was game right there. He scooped it up when he figured out I had one more card.
Yeah, Mine is a very polarizing card.
It's
On a brief side note, another thing that I really liked from Irish Nationals was team jerseys. This is not coming up, but we have jerseys. We have real jerseys again. They have our names on the back. Thank you to Cardmarket for sponsoring these jerseys.
Yes, thank you very much. They look so cool, and I can't wait to get hold of mine. So you're going to be giving them out to the team at the European Championships, is that right?
Correct. So we will be all wearing our shiny new jerseys, except for me, who can't because I will be working. But we
He'll
will
have it on under the suit. You just have to trust him.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just Superman, like, at the end of the event, just bam, jersey. But yeah, so super happy with those. We spent I think it was January that we said, hey, look, we want to get new jerseys.
That wasn't the first time that we started looking at design. Like this has been running over and over in our minds since shortly after 200th YCS, I think.
Yeah, probably. That sounds right. I put up some of the design process in the Patreon stuff, but I might, if I get time, just put up all of the different kind of iterations because we
all
went
of the things
back
that
and
got shut
forth.
down, all of the hours and hours of chat logs, me arguing with you about what I wanted and what everyone else wanted.
I mean, I still want the shirts which had like the Kuribrohs on the belly, and it was like Krang for.
They were red.
It was like Krang from Turtles. It's great.
So,
everybody loves Krang. He's a great
for
character.
everyone in the chat, it was nothing like that. It was like the chest burster from Alien franchise.
It was great. It was solid. But yeah, we had a lot of fun getting to the point that we were happy with the jerseys. And we've just got a very simple design. But yeah, it's going to be really easy to find us at events because we are the purple guys. But yeah, enough of that. Irish Nationals, we had the top 16. It was the first year with top 16 for Irish Nationals that I've ever been at. Sadly, we couldn't run a top 32 because we didn't have time. We finished up at I think around 10:30 in the evening.
This was after 8 rounds of Swiss, right?
8 rounds Swiss, top 16, and we started an hour late because by the time that we had closed registration, we still had 60 people in the queue. So we had an hour for registration, which if we had the 100 people we were expecting would have been fine. But when you have an extra 70 people on top of what you're expecting, it kind of slows you down a little bit. But the team did great, really proud of all the judges who were at the event. They did an excellent job. And I'm super excited for the next year of Irish Nationals. But first, we have Euros coming up. Ping, I believe you got to catch the commentary for Italian Nationals, right? So,
I'm watching it.
Do you have any takeaways from the event? What ended up winning it?
The final was Salad versus Wonder Dragon. And one of the
How's your Italian now, Ping?
Well, everyone spoke English.
Yeah, Marcello.
So my Italian is still great.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I just lost the sound on everyone.
Hello?
Was the commentary in English?
Yeah, Marcello did the commentary in English.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. A lot of nationals did commentary in English. Dutch Nat said it's coverage in English. UK, Austrian, and
Shock! UK did coverage in English.
I mean, I wanted to do Irish, but they vetoed it. But yeah. Yeah. Italian Nationals is probably going to have a lot, Italian Nationals will have a much larger impact on the format than Irish Nationals will have, because again, Irish Nationals, there were a lot of international players. There were probably about 20 people at least who had traveled from other countries for the event. But, I mean, Italian Nationals, close to 700 players, which is really great turnout. And then the Central American WCQ will also have had, I think, the most impactful effect on the format going into North America WCQ.
So I didn't actually get a chance to catch the stream for anything this weekend. Ping's talked a little bit about what happened in Italy. What do we know about the South American Championships?
Was it South American this weekend? I forget. Let me check.
The South American
I know one of... Okay, Tom, we are losing you slightly.
No.
I'm sorry.
Actually, I'm losing you there. I can hear Tom perfectly.
Okay, it could just be that I am suffering from bad connection. But YouTube promises me we have excellent connection, so it's up to you to decide, chat.
Unfortunately, we can't kick Dan because he's actually hosting the call and the stream, so
Whoops.
sadly we'll have to soldier on. Yeah, I saw on Facebook that it was Nicholas from United Gosus who came out on top for the South American Championship, beating Orkest in the final. And yeah, I think he was also playing Salamangreat, so that's Salamangreat really showing up this weekend.
Yeah. I had a look at coverage. It was indeed, just like Tom said, Salah won the event.
It's kind of interesting because, so if people want to jump over to YuGiOh Scope to look at the results that we're getting from Dueling Book at the moment, because again, I do like having slightly harder statistics to back things up because, like we keep discussing, Tom, it is a game of having insufficient sample sizes and having to work out what's actually real and not. And this at least gives us a bit more of a clear sample. And the thing is,
it's really important to remember when you're looking at Dueling Book is that the digital format advances ahead of the paper format. Like if you say what's happening right now on Dueling Book and add sort of a week of delivery time, that will be what happens in real life 1 week from now.
Yeah, but the important thing that I want to bring across here is, like, Salamangreat's showing at a 59% win rate, Striker at a 55, Geist at a 58, Danger Thunder at a 58, True Draco at 57, Orkest at 59, Thunder Dragon Pure at 60, Orkest Trickstar at 61. Like, Crusadia Thunder Dragon 61 as well. Like, that's a really balanced format. Like,
yeah, that's a lot of decks with a very good win rate.
This is the sort of thing that makes me look at a format and say, oh, hey, it doesn't really matter which of these decks you are playing. It matters how good you are at playing it. And it also matters that you just, like, get the right matchups or have the side deck cards for the matchups you end up playing.
That's exactly what I was thinking. In a format like this, it matters a lot the luck of the pairings.
Yeah,
which
so
can be very frustrating, but
it's a super healthy format for growth of the game. It is not a healthy format if you are looking to force players to have above 60% win rates. Because when the format is this fair, you know, currently we have not seen anybody have an edge. Like, you can have an edge by bringing Thunder Dragon, which is what we saw, where Thunder Dragon, like... And I'm not even sure if Knoxville was a case that Thunder Dragon was an edge. I think to an extent you would get some games free because your opponents just had forgotten how Thunder Dragons work. But for the most part, I think it's just a case of, like, the deck was strong, every other deck in the format is similar strength. So I definitely think if there are people here who are preparing for North American WCQ, like, keep your eyes open because stuff might slip out. But it seems at the moment like people have not got any specific kind of a read on the format. Because, like, if you look to national season last year, you know, we saw by the time we got to German nationals that Trickstar Striker was, like, clearly leading the pack. There were, like, other decks which were close to it, but that's not the case this year. There's no de facto best deck. I think the deck that I would be most comfortable on would be something like Salamangreat, because I like how kind of redundant it is in terms of it just, like, any of my monsters are Bailings, which gets me my field spell, which makes my thing live, and if I'm slightly good, then I also have Mirage Stelio access. But yeah, I think that's quite interesting because we haven't had such a broad format in a while, I think.
It definitely makes it much harder to deck build, I think.
It makes it basically impossible, though.
Well, in some ways, it makes it harder. It makes it harder to deck build to win an event. It makes it easier to deck build in that you can just play whatever you want.
Yeah.
Yep, true that.
Have you guys seen the OCG list that was revealed?
I have seen it in passing, but I was sort of not concerning myself with it too much because, like, if I've got time to play Yu-Gi-Oh at the moment, then it's thinking about stuff for Euros. Like, even this very second, as we are streaming out to you guys, I'm shuffling up and drawing some test hands of an idea that we were discussing in the team earlier. So I think this one probably not going to be for sharing today because it might be something that we actually end up playing at Euros.
Yeah.
But like every moment that I have to put to Yu-Gi-Oh is going to be thinking about how we can do best at the event coming up.
That's totally reasonable. I do not have such needs because all I need to do is know what everything does and talk about it. But
yeah, I guess this kind of discussion is perfect practice for you for Euros because you're casting and you're checking up on the format and making sure that you know everything inside out.
Yeah, and I'm still going to choose something like trains and be like, I don't really know what's happening, but 2-2, and hope that he has stuff. But if it's okay with you guys, we're just going to go quickly through each of the cards on the OCG list because I think it can kind of inform us a bit of what the kind of research and development at least are seeing as being strong and what they don't think is strong and where we might be going ourselves in the coming months. So first off, the most like important hit probably is Nightmare Mermaid is banned in the OCG.
Well, it was that or Badish.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on which you prefer to see banned?
I don't think it makes much of a difference. They both take away the big set piece combo and they force you to do things in other ways. I think probably the deck is stronger without Mermaid because if you can get to the combo, you still have the full strength of the ending board. It just takes away the ease of access. So it forces you to play an Orkest deck rather than a put two monsters on the board deck.
Sure. Yeah, that's completely reasonable. I mean, Mermaid has been such a meta card for such a long time as well. And the generic access to it definitely made it a lot more powerful than a lot of other Link monsters. Like, I think it's safe to say it's the best Link one printed.
At the moment, yeah.
I definitely would put it in the top 3.
I think that it's either the Salamangreat Almirage, which obviously isn't in TCG yet, or Mermaid for most impactful.
I mean, obviously, like Link
Kagari's up
have seen play. Actually, yes, Kagari is a very, very strong card. That is true. But it's almost not really a Link monster.
Yeah, I mean it is, but
it is a Link monster, but it doesn't interact with the game in the same way that any other Link monsters work. In the same way that, like, the Zodiac cards are technically XEs, and the Masked Heroes are technically fusions, but they like are so fundamentally different, and like, you know, it's kind of not quite the same. But yes, Kagari is bonkers. The more fun card that got banned was Gandora X, the Dragon of Demolition.
That didn't need to get banned. That just needed the sensible text change that it has in the TCG.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting to see whether or not we get the text updated to the OCG text. But as it is currently in the TCG, it isn't too big of an issue.
I'm really surprised that the OCG didn't just slam it with Narata to make it the same as how we have here, because for the most part the OCG have been very heavy-handed with just throwing out erratas every which way.
Yeah, they do like their erratas. I mean, to be fair, the erratas have always come in chunks, right? Like, we get a bunch of erratas at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So, continuing down the list, we have Salamangreat Gazelle being limited.
That's fine.
I mean, it's still quite a big hit. Like, the deck cares a lot about the card.
For sure, yeah.
Like, you still have so many ways to access it. But it does, like, you know, Crow on Gazelle is so much more impactful now because they can never have the extra Gazelle in hand and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we've seen the game do this kind of hit a lot, hitting the consistency card.
Yeah. Do you think that will hit the deck entirely? They also hit Lady Debug down to 1, but I'm not seeing any other changes to affect Salamangreat on that list. Obviously, this is like very hypothetical because none of us test OCG. It's not a real format to us, really. But just in terms of like, it has no impact on our lives, with the exception of should we be preparing for a player going to Worlds.
But even then, that's not OCG format. That's a one-off format.
That's
in
Frankenstein's monster of.
Yeah.
Frankenstein format.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, I assume Salamangreat will still be playable even with just one Gazelle. Thunder Dragon Colossus going to 1 and Thunder Dragon Hawk going to 1 seems like a much bigger hit.
I'm not sure how huge that is. Like, I think I have briefly read over the list, and there was nothing that really stood out as being hit miles too hard compared to everything else.
Yeah. I mean, Metaverse going to 1 is interesting as well because they have 1 terraforming there as well, so they're just really restricting the number of field spells players can activate or can access.
Yeah.
I feel like the list doesn't really say much about where our list is going to go to because Dangers warped our list a lot.
Yeah, that's fair. We play a very different game with Dangers.
Yeah, I mean, again, Dangers are very close to being Upstart Goblin a lot of the time.
In some ways, certainly, yeah.
In terms of how they interact with resources and deck building, they can often act similarly. So I don't think there's anything else massive to discuss with the OCG list. Like, they have Dynamite Knight to Tree, they have Trishula and Cyberstein and Dark Arm Dragon and Spiral Quick Fix semi-limited. So, I mean, Quick Fix could be a thing. Sure. We're seeing Spiral going about. But, again, we have so many, like, just bonkers combo decks already at the moment.
Well, yeah. Spiral actually took a pretty big hit on this list in the OCG, though. Wouldn't you think?
How so?
Mermaid.
Right, yes, Mermaid is important.
OCG
1 second, I think we are having connection issues, so...
No.
I'm sorry. My internet is terrible. Ping, can you go back to your point again?
So, I'm not quite as familiar with the OCG Spiral. At some point, I'd imagine that by having the Mermaid go to 0, it's going to stop one of the discard and stop a free body on board. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that does sound reasonable.
Testing rank 7. I'm pretty sure that a lot of the time, Spiral decks recently have been using Mermaid just to get into Orcust Nightmare and make Draco Sack.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and obviously Draco Sack.
I guess Draco Sack is sort of just what was it, the newly forbidden rank 7 light version. Tomahawk Light.
Yeah. They're almost the same thing. Summoning 4 tokens versus summoning 2 tokens.
I mean, you can do a lot more with 4 tokens, but it does a similar role, certainly.
I mean, when you don't have a Firewall Dragon, there's a lot less that you can do with 4 tokens as well.
Will not be missed.
So if it's cool with you guys, I think we'll start taking questions from the viewers.
Yeah, for sure. I've seen that we had quite a lot of questions coming up as we were going through.
Yeah. Is there any that stand out that you'd like to tackle first?
Let's see.
So actually, here's something that I'd like to discuss while you're looking at questions. Mind Control is a card that I've been playing about with in Striker main. What are your guys' thoughts on the card? Because it seems like it's quite effective in the format.
Mind Control seems so good in any deck that wants to choose second, but choosing second seems horrible in a format where Thunder Dragons are on the rise and Pendulum is already taking up a significant stake.
Yep, that is true. But you just dodge all of them. It's fine.
But even then, you have the issue of playing Mind Control in Striker. If that's your first, if your first play is the Mind Control monster and your opponent let out results, what's next?
So
oh boy! Now I can't activate my Sky Striker spells and traps.
It's fine because you have 2 Mind Controls, and then you make Phoenix, and you pop their back row, and then you make Mermaid, and you Orcust combo in your Striker deck.
Maybe. No.
It works. 60 card Orcust Striker. You heard it here first, guys.
But yeah, no, I'm on the opinion that Mind Control is an absolutely fantastic card. I use that card a lot, and so I'm actually quite biased towards it. But unfortunately, like Tom said, we're in a format where going first is quite important. And often, even if you're going second, you need your entire 6 cards to be live. And Mind Control doesn't really quite just do enough by itself, I find. A lot of the times, Mind Control functions similarly to an MST, that it bases out 1 negation.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I feel like Mind Control is kind of... Sorry. I feel like it's just kind of like a slightly more restrained version of Evenly Matched, where you get to kill their 1 card that you don't want them to have, rather than them getting to keep the 1 card you don't want them to have.
It works really well if in a deck that plays a lot of things that have to be negated and some power plays. So if you have built a deck that can go second effectively, Mind Control will guaranteed force out a negate. Something like Evenly Matched, you can either use as your follow-up afterwards, or again force out a negate, and you can just play like a critical mass of cards. If 6-card hand has 4 things that have to be negated, they can't negate all of them.
Yeah.
Tom, I think you described Invoked.
Yeah. And we saw Invoked being able to play through a board full of negates, because if you get to a point where you have 1 more thing that they had to negate than they had answers, then you just win immediately, and it's mad. Anyway, I was just scrolling through, and in the comments, do you feel like combo decks have an edge in this meta? I feel like we've sort of across this one a little bit, and unfortunately, nothing really has an edge in the meta. Dan was mentioning before about how there are so many decks with a 55 to 60% win rate that nothing is really just sticking itself out beyond what any other deck can do. I think with combo decks, it's really reliant on whether you get lucky in many ways on die rolls and matchups.
Yeah, we don't have many combo decks in the current format which have like very strong going seconds. Like, they can still win going second, but they're probably at like a 45 at best to win the going second game, right?
I think that Orkest is sort of the closest halfway house on. It has a very defined combo for going first, but it can play through things going second. The real losing battle for Orkest is that there's 3 artifact Lancia in every side deck.
Do you think it's reasonable to consider banning Lancia in the next update? Like, do you think... Like, it feels a lot like Droll to me, where it's a hand trap that just is so impactful in the format. And the fact that, like, at least Droll generally hits most decks in a format, whereas Lancia, like, one deck just doesn't play, and it kind of warps the format a bit.
Orkest is too strong of a deck without Lancia. I think that Lancia is a necessary evil to keep the format somewhat in check. I wish it didn't exist because I really like playing Orkest, but I think that there is a good reason why we see 3 Lancia everywhere, and that Orkest would be unfair without it.
Sure.
So I'm on the mentality that we should never really hit any card that's a silver bullet only for one specific deck.
Mm-hmm. So we have, from my point of view of the archetype of the format, we have like 4 archetypes, right? We have the super duper wombo bonanza combo decks, which are Pendulum and Thunder Dragon.
Yeah.
Then we have the wombo combo a little, and end with Fog Blades, which is the Orkest variants. And like Orkest has so many variants that it's basically like 4 or 5 different decks at this point. Then we have, I mean, you could almost fit Salamangreat into that. Like, there's kind of crossover between
Salamangreat's like halfway between Striker and Orkest.
Yeah, and then
they
you have
do
to,
a
like,
little bit of stuff if they win the die roll and go first, but they're more just trying to play out a long game and beat you with resources.
Yeah, and then Striker is the extreme of that, where it's just like, if the game is going over 4 turns, you should be winning the match, right? Like, you've just drawn all of the cards in your deck. You have so much value. And then finally you have, like, in the corner, Mind Burn, and just the kind of do nothing decks that hope to kill you because you can't deal with doing nothing, which is legitimate. Like, I think there's potentially just a deck out mine deck out there where you're just playing ways to recycle your deck, so you just sit on mine until your opponent has no ways to clear your mines.
Like, you can play Transmigration Prophecy.
You just play Jar of Avarice, right?
You have to play 1 Transmigration Prophecy and 1 Jar of Avarice.
Sure. I mean, totally reasonable. But, or you could play 2 Jar of Avarice and a Needlebook Nest. And a Transmigration Prophecy. You still need a Transmigration Prophecy. Isn't there a card that shuffles just your entire graveyard into your deck?
I think that's the Tails effect on Fiend Comedian. Oh, no, that shuffles or banishes your opponent's graveyard.
In terms of deck out, all we really need is 1 copy of, what's that little puppy called? That
Outstanding
dog.
Outstanding Dog Marin.
Well,
Or
yeah,
you could play an Iron Core of Koakimaru.
Kokimaru is the safer one, because the only thing that can interact with it is Crow, right? And not many are playing Crow.
And you can't get crowed if they're locked down under Mystic Mine.
Yeah, it also means you don't have to discard, right? Because you draw until you have 6 with 5 set, and then you just never draw again.
Yep.
Yep.
We're just giving you guys the deck. Gonna win NA WCQ, Quacky Meru mine.
unless it plays against any competent opposition, or spell and trap removal, or
There we go. Localized Tornado. That shuffles your deck in, right? Or your grave in.
Okay. Moving on a little bit. Question to me: would I still consider playing Orkest at the EU WCQ, or do I want to try something new? Yes. Yeah, I would consider playing Orkest, but I would also like to try something new. At this point, I'm not shutting down either of those avenues. There are several decks that I quite like the idea of. I know that as far as technical play is concerned, I would play better if I play Orkest than anything else, but that doesn't necessarily make it the correct choice, given, as we've said countless times, Lancia is such a big deal against it.
Yeah. Additionally, like last year at Euros on the Friday, like a lot of information dropped before the event, which informed a lot of deck building, regardless of whether or not people followed it. Like information as to what the decks were.
So
appear.
I wasn't really keeping up with what was going on. Do you know what the big changes were on that?
So Gillosaurus was one of the ones. People
Okay.
hadn't been on Gillosaurus before that for the Goki
Invoke.
combos.
Yeah.
And I think there was one or two more things for Goki that hadn't been widely known, but suddenly everybody knew about them on the Friday. And like
Okay.
Gillosaurus, for example, the vendors were like bought out immediately.
Well, I mean, if they didn't know that it was going to be a thing, then they probably wouldn't have brought many along with them.
I don't think they brought many along with them. But yeah, so potentially something like that could appear for Euros, or we might even see something like that at North American, which would inform what people are going to play, right?
Yeah. Obviously, everyone's going to be watching it. It will be a big streamed event, and so we'll get a load of information from there.
Mm-hmm. And also, it just matters so much more than nationals. Like, the kind of general nationals that we have here in Europe, you win and you get your VIP package to Euros, which is awesome. But the difference between a VIP package to Euros and a VIP package to Berlin for the World Championships,
there's a big.
I don't think you can even compare it. Like, it's just such a massive difference.
Uganda Knuckles asks, Thomas, are you top 8 for Worlds? No, I am not. Next question.
You're top 8 in our hearts.
Yeah.
So just going back to the card that I was thinking of that shuffles your entire graveyard in, it's Localized Tornado, and it also shuffles your hand into your deck, so potentially not the card I want
what
to
a
play.
great card. We have Nixon Dauphin asking, what do we think of Salad Orkest? So the Salamangreat Orkest deck. Have we discussed that on stream, or were we just discussing that in our chat?
Yeah. I believe I discussed it last week when around the time that I tried to get Alec to join and everything broke and I cried. But yeah, I don't think we've discussed.
It doesn't really. Oh no, I think we did mention it about how there's so tight extra deck for both of those decks, and it doesn't seem like it really offers anything. That it doesn't solve the problems that either of those decks have existing, and so there's no real payoff to combining the two together.
Yeah, I would agree that I don't really see it. I've spoken to some people about it, and they say, oh, well, you can switch between which engine you're using, so you have a bit of versatility in that regard. But again, based on win rates and the fact that we're not seeing it showing up at all on the YuGiOh scope numbers, suggests to me that it's perhaps not.
So I vaguely recall seeing one deck profile that made a good showing at UK National on Salad Orkest. the extra deck, just like Tom said, was extremely tight. I believe that player chose not to play any Heat Leo in order to accommodate the Orkest engine. And even then, I'm not quite sure that is the correct approach because Heat Leo is just one of the strongest spell trap removal in that deck. So it really doesn't quite. So I really don't quite understand what exactly is Orkest package offering to Salad players.
And it also seems like there's a real disagreement in the two decks. You can't do Orkest and then Salamangreat because you can only special summon Darks. And a lot of the time, you can't even do Salamangreat and then Orkest because Mirage Thalio locks you into only activating fires.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird. It's weird that it is a deck that exists.
But I guess the only bonus point is that you probably have a lot of way into a mermaid because you have several ways to get into Gazelle, which is just basically two monsters by itself. I guess that's probably the only benefit it has. Maybe more.
Okay. Danny's Yugi Expo asks, what do we think of no material and where it stands in the current format?
I think if you're playing a going second deck, which is playing hand traps, then Gnome is a card that you should be playing right now. I think there's an argument between it and Cherries, but I think I'm never crazy about Cherries. I'm always like, oh, this hits so much into format, but then I can never really justify playing it.
Cherries relies not only on being a going second deck, but also on being one that doesn't need a full extra deck of its own.
Yeah.
So I think no material is probably a little better placed than it, but at the same time, we know how broad the format is right now. We know that there are loads and loads of decks, which again is a good reason not to play Cherries. But not all of them get hurt by no material.
The problem with Cherries is the decks that could play Cherries are probably playing Extravagance.
Yeah, those two cards don't necessarily line up ideally against each other. You really don't want to draw Ghost Reaper off Extravagance.
Yeah.
So let's just go back slightly on topic on the no material. I mean, on paper, no material is slightly better than Ghost Reaper, and I do feel that no material is a very strong card if your deck is afraid of a specific matchup. So let's just take Orkest as an example. If your deck is really afraid of Orkest, then if you have 3 copies of no material and 3 copies of Lancia, then that's going to improve your going second matchup significantly. So I actually do think no material is a really good card in the format, but only for decks that have a specific weakness to some of the most meta deck in the format.
Okay. Yama Oroshi asks, do you think other variants of Orkest, and he lists Burning Abyss and Blackwings, besides the Trickstar one, have enough unique upsides to be worth considering playing? I think I can answer that for any variant that you could possibly consider in a fairly succinct way. At the moment, Orkest loses to hand traps on Mermaid in game 1, and it loses to big combo decks if it goes second in game 1, and it loses to Lancia after siding. If you can find an engine which allows you to play through hand traps if you go first, allows you to break boards when you're going second, and allows you to put up some sort of board through Lancia after siding, then you'll find a very good Orkest deck there. I personally feel like Trickstars, which are listed as not one of the more unique takes, are probably best positioned to help you play through hand traps and to be able to break boards when going second, but they still don't add anything to beat Lancia. So I think probably looking more towards something that will help you win after you've gone into your side decks could be advantageous, but you need to be careful that you don't open yourself up to losing more of your pre-side games just by adding loads of cards that would be dead if you open with them, which is the problem that I see most often with different Orkest variants, just so many bricks in the main deck.
Yeah. I mean, it's either you have the extremes of people who have so many bricks, or else you have the extremes of people who have, like, the perfect goldfish deck, where they don't have any kind of emergency plans.
Do you want to offer anything that Ping, or shall I go for the next question here?
I think you covered that completely. Let's go for the next one.
Okay. What deck do we think is going to be most represented at the European Championships? I say Salamangreat.
I think Salamangreat is probably a safe choice. I think, like, Salamangreat, like, it just inherently will be the most represented because we are in Central Europe. The deck is super cheap. The deck has been performing phenomenally. Like,
I expect to see Sky Striker as a distant second, with lots of other decks shortly behind it. But Salamangreat, I think, will be the most represented by a reasonable margin.
Yeah,
100% agree. Salamangreat just doesn't lose. Salamangreat just doesn't lose too much.
yeah. I mean, the only other deck that is, like, could be relatively accessible is something like the Pendulum Endymion deck, but the Endymion, like the pure Endymion version, is a lot weaker than the other Pendulum versions. And once you start going into the, like, Magician Engine and stuff, it suddenly becomes a relatively expensive deck. So even though Pendulum is well positioned, because, like we said, combo decks are as playable as non-combo decks, I don't think it'll be as represented.
Okay. Next up, we have JY Sharif asking, what are our thoughts on Lunarlights?
Do Lunarlights still have access to Azatoth? Because they had been using pretty much the same combo that Orkest had, and then we also don't have the Raid Raptor link yet, which means they don't have access to rank up Magic into Sidra Infinity.
Yeah, Lunarlights still have easy access into Azathoth on their turn. I think that it would probably be a deck that you would play choosing second. And so having just a regular rank 4 Azathoth is still, like, a useful tool for them. I know that it's a deck that lots of us on the team rushed to pick up shortly around when
Chicago.
I think
it was after.
It was a few weeks before Chicago, when we first saw the deck being effective, but didn't expect it to be anywhere near as big as it actually ended up being, because Vladis had done well at an event in Ireland.
Yeah.
And we all watched his profile there and thought, wow, this is quite something. But I myself never actually got around to playing it after that, because I jumped straight onto Orkest and I haven't played anything else since, really.
Yeah. I mean, it comes to the issue, right, though, that, like, does it beat the combo decks when the combo decks go first?
Yeah, a deck that has to choose second and tries to OTK has to be able to deal with a lot right now. So if you go second against a Pendulum deck or a Thunder Dragon deck, I don't know if a Lunarlight hand is going to be able to break through that much stuff. Obviously, they have the advantage of being able to send us cost for activating the
yellow,
effect.
yes.
So
The
one
yellow one.
interesting though. So one interesting though one interesting I just realized that Tom, as you mentioned, they're still really good at making Azeroth on their turn.
Yeah.
And a lot of the big combo deck that put out negates are all monster negates.
Yes, but those monster negates can be used to interrupt on Nyala. So if you summon a Nyala and then the Pendulum player just activates the Hieratic Seal, put it back in the extra deck, you've invested a lot of resources in not really achieving anything at that point.
It's a real shame, yeah. Hieratic Link does exist.
And just being able to summon a Dinkersu and send it to the grave or destroy it with Bardiche similarly. I think that Lunarlights might be a deck to consider, but it's not one that I feel like looking at from a position of not knowing it especially well seemed like it would stack up very well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one. From memory, I remember that one of the Lunarlight boss fusion monster is capable of negating monster effect. But unfortunately, I can't quite see a way of getting into that monster through a board of negates and interruptions.
Okay. This is a question that I like the sound of. Hannah Spawner asks, do you guys have any tips for building a cube in regards to archetypes? Cube is great. I hope anyone that likes the idea of it has a chance to watch. There's a draft that's been uploaded to the Team Kuribrohs channel. We had a great time doing it. My particular cube has very much gone away from the inclusion of any archetypes.
Yeah, you've cut down a lot of the archetypes.
Yes, it's absolutely minimal in that regard. But how we play ours is that every card is played exactly as it is in the TCG standard. So there's no additional rules. There's no ability to search things that you wouldn't be able to search in a conventional game. And to that end, every card needs to sort of stand up for itself, and you can't have archetypes filled with cards that will only work if you've drafted the entire group of cards. So personally, if you intend to build a cube that functions in the same way that mine does, I would say avoid any archetype card that you would only play if you have other things to specifically combo with it.
Yeah. I mean, do you consider Rescue Cat an archetype, Tom?
Hello, Marcello. Yeah, okay, so a point of contention in cube that we use is that it does feature Rescue Cat and about, I think, maybe 8 or 10 different cards that you can summon off Rescue Cat. Many people don't like to pick the cat because they don't necessarily know what other pieces that they need to draft to go with it. But given that I designed the set myself and I'm always in control of what goes in and out in updates, I have a pretty good knowledge of exactly what's there, and I will always be thinking about it as I'm drafting. Have I got some things in case I get an opportunity to take the Rescue Cat? And so I'd say that at least 50% of the drafts that get played, I will have the Rescue Cat in my deck, and that's obviously a much higher than the expected amount when you're drafting with 6 or 8 people. And I recall we drafted at UK Nationals with Marcello joining in. He was somewhat frustrated with some of the combos I was able to do with Rescue Cat on my first turn.
It's a good card. I have definitely been traumatized by it before.
Anyone that's played against me in Cube has probably a Rescue Cat.
We will be trying to arrange something cube-based for Utrecht, but we'll need to figure out whether or not we can find somewhere that we can play it, that we can either live stream it from, or else that we can have a bit of an audience.
We just need to track down Konami and say this whole top 8 playoff is a waste of time. Let's just drop the world instead.
Whoa,
Just
Tom. Just make the top 8 play cube.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Tell them that I've brought Cube and that they should play that instead.
Mm-hmm. I'll put a good word in for the cube. Yeah. Cube is very good. We will be releasing the list that we use at some point, probably after the European Championship. That depends on how your time availability is, right, Tom?
Yeah, I'd love to do more cube-based content, but in exactly the same vein as we mentioned before, right now, my Yu-Gi-Oh thoughts are directed only at what do I play for Constructed.
Yeah. We also have the kind of limited, or effectively like sealed format that you play, where you have the pre-built decks, currently known as Denko. Name may change to make it more understandable. I'm still pro Squirrel format, but we'll have a lot of the kind of alternate format stuff to talk about once we're not so focused on European Championships.
We've got some more good questions coming in from the chat here. Little Sheep asks, what's our opinion on Phantazmay in the current meta? I'm not really sure on this one. What do you guys think?
Personally, I think Phantazmay might depend on which deck you play yourself. But on a very broad basis, I love that card against both Striker and against Salamangreat. If a Salamangreat has a weak opening hand and opportunity goes into one of their Link monster, like with their Link 1, and you can drop their Phantazmay, you can potentially win the game next turn, purely from the amount of damage you can do by itself. Against Striker, well, we all know how good Phantazmay is against Striker. Force them to have one additional piece of interaction on it. But that's just my opinion, and that's only from a going second perspective. And that's not considering to the deck that you play yourself. So we may have to dissect this question down into different type of decks as well as going first and second. Daniel?
Yeah. I think Phantazmay is super key to the format because without it, Salamangreat would be a lot weaker. The fact that if you are playing hand traps, Phantazmay is so much better because it lets you either mulligan your hand traps back in if you don't want them, or pull hand traps out of your deck if you do want them. Makes it such a versatile card, I think, and it means you can have 3 slots which just give you a very good going second without having to committing to things like Evenleys and the harder go second cards.
I think on that note, it may only be truly effective in a deck like Salamangreat or the going second Thunder Dragon that we recently see cropping up, in that you have to be playing a sort of threshold amount of hand traps in the main deck to be able to get full value from it.
I mean, you can also get full value from it if having the perfectly sculpted 5-card hand plus a blank lets you beat every deck in the format. But again, I think it's a case of that's not something that we have seen so far. There isn't a deck which consistently kills people going second because we have the Big Thunder and we have the Big Pendulum decks, which are just going, bleh, here's my board.
Nothing gets through it.
Yeah. Except for LDR and Mech Knight Invoked.
Or what, Giraffe? Which unfortunately doesn't even beat it anymore because they have Hieratic Seal.
Oh, but you go what Squirrel and you equip it with a shield and you just bam.
They will just bounce it. I really wish that What Giraffe were a card that could beat Pendulum, which I think it would have been prior to the hieratic link, but now definitely is not.
Yeah, hieratic link is an issue. There's actually the cute one. Is it Ghost Bird of Bewitchment?
Yes.
Which is the level 4, which gains effects depending on where it's placed on the field. And basically, the way it works is if you place it in front of the hieratic seal, you also it shuts off hieratic seal and whatever negates behind it, which I'm pretty sure is always the Vortex Dragon.
Generally, yeah. So it's kind of like a baby Amano Awato in that regard, but you'd already we brought it up in our group chat and came to the conclusion that you'd always just rather have a sphere mode.
Yeah, sphere mode, good card, especially if you're planning to play second a lot. Assuming your opponent doesn't tear your hand apart with Chaos Dragons. Just as a note, somebody was asking about the new archetype that we got revealed this weekend. We're not really going to touch off archetypes that are coming out because it doesn't prepare us for European Championships. Again, once we're in the off season, we can probably kind of fantasize and play about a bit more with potential future formats. But there is only so much to be gained from future formats when we know exactly what is going to be legal for the important events at the moment. It's not an effective use of our time right now, even though it definitely is interesting and something we will talk about in the near future.
YuGiOh Team EU asks a pretty heavy question that I think is quite an interesting one. Would I do the Worlds race again? That's an interesting one.
For people who don't know, this is your second time in the Worlds race, right?
Yeah, in 2017 I was playing along, and JY ended up winning it. We were pretty close going into nationals, and I completely flopped in nationals, and he continued on his great form, did very well there. And yeah, he got the place at Worlds. Congratulations to him. Absolutely deserved it. And the following year, I completely took a step back from things, did a lot of commentary.
National?
Continued. Yeah, I ended up winning nationals at the end of that season, which would have been great this season. But yeah, it came at a time when I didn't need it, I guess. I'm still very happy to have been able to do it, but
particularly with Rescue Catch.
Yeah, and then off the back of winning UK nationals at the end of the 2018 season, I felt pretty good. I felt like I was in a good position to really start pushing. I got tops at the first two YCSs of the 2019 season. And so, yeah, I was just pushing on, going to as many regionals as I can. And I was in a really good position coming up towards the end of the season. And then for a second time, completely bombed out nationals. And yeah, fell out of the top 8. So it was pretty heavy. I'd put in a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort, lost a lot of time that I could have spent doing other things. And yeah, it put me in a position where I was like, how do I feel about this? I guess like I still enjoyed all of the games that I played along the way, but I don't know that I would have wanted to play as many events as I did had I not been trying to get to Worlds. Now I have a lot of like feedback for Konami about how the system is run and how I think they could make it so that it more rewards people that play well rather than people that play a lot. That's not to say that I think that the people who are in the top 8 aren't the right people to be there. but that those people shouldn't have had to do as much as they did to get that position. I think that Carr has been the top player in Europe this season, but he hasn't played many events. So if I hadn't messed up at my national championships, he wouldn't even be in the top 8, and that would be a complete injustice because he's just been playing better than everyone else this year. And the system needs a rethink so that it reflects people that have that kind of a year. You shouldn't need to travel every single week to be in that top 8. It should reflect how well you play, not how much you play.
Yeah, so the world points race is something that we've discussed a lot, and it is a case that what does the points race serve to achieve? So obviously the European Championship means that anybody can qualify for Worlds, because realistically, like, I think this format particularly, like, anybody who is prepared and shows up to this event, even with, like, relatively budget decks, like, I think you can play, like, a pretty solid Salamangreat build for, like, between 100 to 150 euro, and you'd only be missing, like, Phantazmays, and you'd have all of the other win conditions, and you would still be able to perform very well and potentially win the event. But the World's points race presumably is to reward players who are, like, consistently performing well throughout the season. But you have the issue where, like, the points numbers are all unknown going into events, and, like, it doesn't account for variance very well.
Yeah. I think that I guess, yeah, there's definitely going to be some level of bias in this comment, but I think that at the moment there is too much weighting on national championships being worth twice what a YCS is worth, and coming right at the end of the season. If you can make a mistake at any other event, you can fail to top any other event, but if you fail to top nationals, that's it. That's your lot. Like, I felt like I had quite a good season this year, but nationals wasn't my day, and that bombed me from being second in the European standings going into nationals down to falling just shy, losing to Carr and coming out 9th at the end of it. So yeah, part of that's just going to be me frustrated with how things worked out, but I think that there could be some change there to make a more predictable system, and one where having a bad day at any particular event doesn't matter more than having a bad day at any other Premier event.
Yeah. Particularly due to the fact that nationals fall at the very end of the format. It means that you have, like, a massive point event that, there's no way for players to recover after nationals if they have an issue there. Like, it's such a defining event, whereas if nationals were at the start of the format, then it would inform people, okay, hey, look, I made top 64 of my nationals, I'm good to start chasing points.
Yes.
So that's something that I definitely see as a kind of point of frustration. We are going to be finishing up because it's almost 8:30. So if people have questions, quick-fire questions can be given now. There's an interesting question that can go to you, Tom, which is, what kind of board can you make with Orkest under Lancia?
If you're playing a pure Orkest deck under Lancia, your board is generally Galatea Pass and you lose. So I think that, as we mentioned previously, the most effective build of Orkest going forward is likely to be one that can prevent or mitigate the effect of Lancia.
Yeah.
I think the strongest board you can make in that situation might just be Dingerous Window.
Yeah, if you're playing the instant fusion, then Dingirsu Winder is absolutely the way to go. But that will only win a game against very few opposition decks, really.
Yeah.
There's a question about what do we think about other Yu-Gi-Oh teams. I think any team that supports its players and, really promotes the game to the community and is a positive influence is excellent. There's a lot of good work that people are doing in the game and helping grow the game and increasing accessibility to the game, which is fantastic. And so any of the groups that are working on that, or the individuals even, I have a lot of respect for those people. And I think it's really great to see where we are at this point. Particularly, my kind of scope is European Yu-Gi-Oh! And I think we have some teams that are really doing a lot of good for their communities and the greater European community.
Yeah, I think that the growth of teams over the last few years has really given a lot of opportunities to a lot of players. So, like, even outside of the big teams that a lot of people know, there's so many people that are just putting something together to help their community and improve the quality of players at every level in the game. And, like, even if it's just a group of friends that are hanging out, not really, like, trying to go for tops, but it can just add a lot. It brings a new dimension to every event that you play.
Yeah, I think teams are great. If you can get a team together, you will improve as a player, just like hands down. As long as you guys are playing, it has a benefit to the individual as well as to others.
Yeah. It doesn't even have to be a formalized team. It can just be having a group that you test with, that you travel with, and that you talk about theory with. So long as you all want to improve, you will improve together.
Yeah. So this is a question that had actually happened earlier, and I don't know if we caught it, but I believe it's for Salamangreat, and it's what do you think of reducing spell and trap removal to 2 in order to make space for 2 ogre in the main, considering it to counteract Thunder and Pendulum. I'll let you guys answer it in a second, but my point of view is, like, you kind of have to make the call, am I preparing for the mind decks or am I preparing for the wombo combo decks, and just stick with that for your game 1 game plan and then side in for the other should it happen. I think kind of going middle ground is a very high roll strategy, and if you high roll and it pays off, then sure, but I would be more towards reducing variance and hoping that you get good variance in the tournament.
Choose the one that you think you're more likely to oppose and hard counter that and account for the other in your side deck.
Yeah, exactly. What factors do you think are preventing pendulums from winning premier events right now? I think it can win.
Volume of players?
It's less represented, which means it's just statistically less likely to win events, right?
Yeah.
And it's just another version of the Thunder Dragon deck. So, like, when you consider it plus the other heavy combo decks as being effectively the same deck, then I think you can kind of consider it as something that's close to topping. Like, it does so much of the same stuff as Thunder Dragons are doing right now.
There's one thing though. Pendulum do have a harder time going second, breaking through a combo field, than Thunder Dragon, which is a real shame.
Yeah, I think that Pendulum, if they lose the die roll to something like Orkest that puts up a reasonable turn 1 board, they definitely struggle to win that match outside of finding a Lancia for game 3.
Okay, so we are about to finish up. I will stay around in the chat to talk to people. If they have a few more questions before heading off, I do need to pack for America because I leave at like noon tomorrow. So I won't be able to stay too long. Do you guys have any last thoughts or advice for people who are preparing for the North American WCQ this weekend?
Go online, see what's being played right now, and prepare for beating that, because what's online tonight is almost certainly the meta for next weekend.
My only advice would be just to start practicing, making sure that you're practicing in scenarios where you're extremely tired, because that's when you're going to make the most mistakes.
Yeah, for sure.
Other than that, best of luck to everyone going to American Nationals.
Thank you all very much for joining us. Once again, I have been Daniel. I've been joined with Tom and Ping. I don't know if I've pointed at them or I've pointed the wrong direction. Not sure. But thank you all for joining us. I need to double check what's happening next week because I think I am flying when the show should be on. But if we're not back next Monday, then we will find an alternate time for the stream, or else it will be Thomas with somebody else. But best of luck to everybody at North American WCQ. Thank you for joining us. We have been the Kuribrohs, you have been you, and we will catch you next week.
Cheers, guys. Bye.